podcast contains discussions of real criminal cases, including descriptions of violence, abuse, and other disturbing events. Some listeners may find this content too graphic or emotionally triggering. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This episode is not suitable for children or sensitive audiences. If you feel distressed at any point while listening, please consider pausing the episode and seeking professional support. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Crime KE podcast. My good name is Ajuma and I am a human rights journalist from Kenya. This week, we get into the murder of Benjamin Kiplagat. Now, at the time of his murder, he was a long-distance runner specializing in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. Now, even though he was born and raised in Kenya, he spent part of his life in Uganda and represented Uganda in athletics competitions. This is a story of an athlete who carried the hope of not only his family but of a nation, only to have his life cut short in a very brutal manner. At around 1:30 a.m. on the night of December 31st, 2023, the traffic police patrolling near the Kimumu area just outside of Eldoret were called to the scene of an accident in Texas near Kimumu Secondary School along the Eldoret E10 road. The residents told the police that a Toyota Hilux pickup had hit a motorcycle and entered a ditch, and the driver was bleeding and unconscious in the vehicle. When the police arrived at the scene, they quickly realized that this was not an accident, but a homicide. This was after they realized that the driver, 34-year-old Benjamin Kiplagat, was dead, and it appeared that he had several stab wounds on his neck and chest. The police identified the vehicle as belonging to Benjamin's brother, and they immediately informed the detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, and they started an investigation into the murder. And this investigation started with the motorcycle at the scene. Police stressed the motorcycle involved in the accident, in quotes, as belonging to a 25-year-old motorbike rider identified as David Ekai, and they started by tracking him down. On the next day, January 1st of 2024, police traced David to a house in Kitale and they put him in custody. Now, in his house, police recovered several pieces of evidence, including clothing and shoes with blood stains on them. After an intense interrogation, David named another man identified as Peter Oshuru as his accomplice. Police traced Peter to the Langas area of Eldoret, and he was also taken into DCI custody. In Peter's house, they recovered more pieces of evidence, including a suit, a tie, and a hat that had bloodstains on them, and even a bloodied knife, which police believed that was the murder weapon. Now, the most damning piece of evidence, though, came from CCTV footage close to the crime scene, which was handed over to the police by one of the residents. Now, in the footage, David and Peter come into frame at around 1 a.m., 1:11 a.m., and they are both on the motorbike. A few seconds later, Benjamin follows behind them in the pickup, and they all disappear into the dark and out of the frame for about 3 minutes. Now, according to court documents, at the time, Benjamin was returning home after taking his brother's employees home that night. At 1:14 a.m., the pickup returns into the CCTV's frame, and the pickup can be seen dragging a motorbike under its tires. The pickup turns into a corner before it hits a ditch and stops. Now, a few seconds later, Peter follows behind the pickup on foot this time around, and he can be seen looking around, and then he signals for David, who is out of frame at this point. He tells him, "Come." And this is the point when you can clearly see how he is dressed. Now, Peter was dressed in a dark suit, a hat, and a tie with a white shirt. Now, after he signals David, David follows Peter, and you can see David wearing a red jacket. I'm mentioning this because these clothes were among the blood-stained items recovered from their houses when they were arrested. The two of them then head towards the pickup and they disappear from the frame for about 1 minute. And at around 1:15 a.m., they return acting as if nothing had happened. Now, at this point, as they're walking away from the vehicle, Peter is seen shoving something into his pocket, which was eventually determined to be the knife, the murder weapon. Now, at the time of their arrest, police say that they believe that the motive for the crime was robbery. But the evidence presented disputed that because Benjamin was found with his phone and the cash that he was carrying still intact. The cash amounted to up to 8,000 Kenyan shillings. Now, according to the police's theory, Peter and David followed Benjamin on that New Year's Eve with the intention of robbing him. They apparently used the motorbike to block his way and stop him. And when they did, they got into a struggle and Benjamin was stabbed. After he was stabbed, he then managed to knock over the motorbike and speed away in the car. But because he was already injured and the vehicle had dragged the bike with it, he lost control of the vehicle and ended up in a ditch. The two were charged with Benjamin's murder and arraigned at the Eldoret law courts, and they both denied the charges against them, and eventually the trial began. Now, this case was heard by Justice Ruben Nyakundi at the Eldoret High Court. A postmortem conducted on Benjamin's body on January 4th of 2024 showed that he had died from excessive bleeding caused by stab wounds to his chest. The autopsy report also showed that Benjamin had defensive wounds on his arms and hands, meaning that he had tried to fight them off unsuccessfully. Now, in the trial, the prosecution lined up 9 witnesses to testify against the two suspects, including residents of the Kimumu area who had the commotion outside on the night of Benjamin's murder. Now, according to court documents, one of the residents who alerted the police testified that he was startled from his sleep on the night of Benjamin's murder by a loud bang followed by a screeching sound. When he went outside to see what was happening, he saw the pickup in a ditch outside his house. And he also saw a man running away from the vehicle. He said that the man was dressed in a hat and a dark suit. This man would eventually be identified as Peter. He said that the neighbors eventually came out and they thought that an accident had just happened. No one thought that it was a murder that had happened. And that was why the traffic police were the first authorities to be called to the scene. Now, in court, Peter and David were accused of belonging to a group of robbers who had been giving the people in the Kimumu area a very hard time. A medical expert also testified to the DNA evidence in the case. The expert told the court that Benjamin's DNA was found on the bloodied knife found in Peter's house and the clothes found in both of their houses. Now, in their defense, both Peter and David took the stand to tell their side. They both denied being at the crime scene despite CCTV footage. Now, when Peter took the stand, Peter told the court that on the night of Benjamin's murder, he was actually partying at a club called Belasco Lounge in Eldoret town. He said that he met David outside the club when he was looking for a motorbike to take him to another entertainment joint. He said that he paid him for the service and they left Belasco to head on to the next joint. But on their way, he said that another man flagged them down and insisted on being carried to his destination by David. And that is when Peter says that They agreed that he gets off the bike for David to drop off the new passenger and then come back for him once he finished that drop off. He told the court that that was the last time he saw David that night because he never came back for him, and he eventually opted for another rider who took him back to his home in his house in Langas. Now, when David took the stand, he actually went along with Peter's story and told the court that the man whom he picked up on the way pulled a knife on him and snatched his motorcycle. He said that that was the reason why he never went back for Peter, and he believed that this mysterious man was the one responsible for Benjamin's murder. Now, after a 9-month long trial, both Peter and David were eventually found guilty on October 28th of 2024. The judge in the case said that the evidence presented showed that the two were at the scene on the night of the murder, so their testimonies were not credible. He said that the CCTV footage showed the two following Benjamin and attacking him on the same night that they say they weren't at the crime scene. The judge also agreed that all the evidence presented pointed to Peter and David carrying out the murder in cold blood that night. Benjamin's family asked that the judge give the two suspects a death sentence or, at the very least, life imprisonment for the crime. Now, in her statement to the court, Benjamin's mother, who was 70 years old at the time, said that the court should give them a life sentence because by murdering Benjamin, they took away a very important part of their family. She said that the murderer's only motive was to murder him as painfully as possible because they did not even take any of his properties. They did not take his phone. They did not take the 8,000 shillings that he was carrying. So that they only remain with one motive, to murder him and to do it painfully. Now, according to several sources, Benjamin was very young when he developed a passion for running. He dropped out of school due to financial challenges and decided to pursue running full time. According to his mother, Benjamin started running barefoot before they could even afford running shoes, and he trained and trained his way into becoming an international athlete in the 3,000-meter steeplechase, representing Uganda in 3 Olympic Games. Now, according to a report by Al Jazeera, at the time of his murder, Benjamin was in Eldoret to train before going to participate in his upcoming races in Uganda for the year 2024. He had no idea that he would not even make it to the year 2024. Now, about a week after they were found guilty, the Eldoret High Court sentenced both Peter and David to serve 35 years in jail for Benjamin's murder each. The judge said that the punishment fit the crime because the two clearly planned and committed the offense with a clear intention to murder Benjamin. He said that their actions in the CCTV footage showed premeditation. And now, after the verdict, Benjamin's family say that they were happy that justice had been served, even though the suspects did not get a life sentence as they had hoped. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this episode. You can support Crime KE podcast by sharing this episode with your friends so that we can get a larger community to listen to these cases. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at crime.ke, or you can find me on Facebook at Ajuma Millicent for updates on the cases covered on the podcast. I have tagged the podcast contact information and social media pages in the show notes of this episode so that it is easier for you to reach out if you have any feedback on this episode or the podcast in general. Don't forget to give the podcast a 5-star rating on Spotify and catch the next episode of Crime KE podcast on Thursday next week on the same platform you're listening on right now. But until then, stay safe and remember, It is crime with a K.